The moment Mia Geller stepped through the gleaming glass doors of the penthouse, she knew her life was about to change, just not in the way she expected. The golden retriever that bounded toward her with unbridled enthusiasm seemed far more welcoming than the stern-faced man watching from across the expansive living room. "You must be the dog walker," he said, his voice deep and resonant in the cavernous space. "I'm Blake Prescott." Even without introduction, Mia would have recognized him. His face had graced countless business magazines as the founder of Prescott Shipping, the fastest-growing maritime logistics company in the country. At 34, Blake Prescott had revolutionized global shipping with his innovative tracking systems. "Mia Geller," she managed, extending her hand while the golden retriever circled excitedly around her legs. "And who's this beautiful boy?" "That's Oliver," Blake replied, his expression softening slightly as he glanced at the dog. "He needs consistent walks twice daily. My schedule doesn't allow for it anymore." Mia knelt down, letting Oliver sniff her hand before scratching behind his ears. "We're going to be great friends, aren't we?" she cooed, earning an enthusiastic tail wag. Blake cleared his throat. "I've prepared a detailed schedule. Oliver requires specific routes and timing. I'll compensate you substantially for adhering precisely to my instructions." Mia straightened, taking the folder he extended. The amount listed on the first page nearly made her choke. "This is very generous." "I value excellence and reliability," he replied matter-of-factly. "The last 3 walkers couldn't manage either." "I won't let you down," Mia assured him, though a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. The pay was incredible, but Blake Prescott seemed impossibly rigid. "We'll see," Blake said, already turning back to his laptop. "Oliver's leash is by the door. The doorman has been notified of your clearance. You'll start tomorrow, 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. As Mia left with Oliver for their introductory walk, she wondered what she'd gotten herself into. The money would certainly help with her student loans from veterinary school, but Blake Prescott seemed like the most uptight person she'd ever met. Little did she know that behind his cool exterior, Blake watched her gentle interaction with Oliver with unexpected interest. For the first time in months, someone had made his dog genuinely happy, and that meant more to him than he cared to admit. The next morning, Mia arrived at exactly 6:55 a.m., dressed in running clothes and prepared for whatever the day might bring. The doorman, an older gentleman named Frank, greeted her warmly. "Morning, Miss Geller. Mr. Prescott said you'd be coming regularly now." "That's the plan," she replied with a smile. "Has Oliver always lived here?" Frank chuckled. "Oh, Mr. Prescott only got him about 8 months ago. After his father passed, he seemed, well, lonely, I suppose, though he'd never admit it." Mia absorbed this information as she rode the elevator to the penthouse. When she knocked, Blake answered immediately, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit despite the early hour. "Good, you're punctual," he noted, stepping aside to let her enter. "Oliver's been waiting." As if on cue, the golden retriever bounded into view, practically vibrating with excitement. Mia knelt to greet him, laughing when he licked her face enthusiastically. "The route is mapped in the folder," Blake continued, checking his watch. "He needs exactly 45 minutes of exercise, followed by fresh water when you return. You have my number for emergencies." "Got it," Mia said, clipping the leash to Oliver's collar. "Any other instructions?" Blake hesitated, then shook his head. "No, that's all for now." "I'll be here when you return." As Mia walked Oliver through the upscale neighborhood, she couldn't help but wonder about Blake Prescott. For someone so young and successful, he seemed incredibly isolated. Even his luxurious penthouse had felt sterile, more like a museum than a home. Oliver, however, was an absolute delight. Friendly and well-behaved, he trotted happily beside her, occasionally stopping to investigate interesting scents. When they passed a small park, Mia checked her watch. "What do you think, buddy? 5 minutes of fetch wouldn't hurt, would it?" Oliver's tail wagged enthusiastically at the word fetch, and Mia took that as agreement. She unclipped his leash in the enclosed dog area and pulled a tennis ball from her pocket. Oliver immediately focused, his body tensing with anticipation. The game of fetch revealed a playful side to the dog that made Mia laugh out loud. When they resumed their walk, both were in high spirits, and they returned to the penthouse exactly on schedule. Blake was waiting, his expression unreadable as Oliver bounded in happily. "How did it go?" "Great," Mia replied, filling Oliver's water bowl. "He's wonderfully trained." "Of course he is," Blake said stiffly. "I ensured he received proper instruction." Mia bit her tongue to prevent a sarcastic response. "Well, he's also just naturally sweet. You're lucky to have him." Something flickered across Blake's face, surprise, perhaps before he nodded. "Yes, I suppose I am. Same time this afternoon." "I'll be here," Mia promised, giving Oliver one last pat before heading to the door. As she left, she didn't notice Blake watching her, or the slight frown that appeared as he observed how eagerly Oliver followed her to the door. The afternoon walk proceeded similarly, except this time Mia brought a different toy, a rope for tug-of-war that Oliver adored. When they returned, Blake was on a video call in his home office, barely acknowledging their return except with a distracted wave. Days turned into weeks, and Mia settled into a comfortable routine with Oliver. Blake remained formal but gradually became less rigid about the exact routes and timing, seeming to trust Mia's judgment with his beloved pet. One rainy Thursday afternoon, Mia arrived soaking wet, having forgotten her umbrella. Blake opened the door and stared at her dripping form with alarm. "You're drenched," he stated unnecessarily. Mia laughed, pushing her wet hair from her face. "Astute observation. Is it okay if I skip the walk until the storm passes? I don't think Oliver would enjoy getting soaked." Blake hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in, I'll get you a towel." Mia waited awkwardly in the entryway, trying not to drip on the expensive marble floor. Oliver sat beside her, leaning against her leg in solidarity. When Blake returned with a fluffy white towel, their fingers brushed during the handoff. Mia noticed for the first time that his eyes weren't simply brown but flecked with gold. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly aware of their proximity. "I'll just dry off a bit." Blake cleared his throat and stepped back. "You can use the guest bathroom to freshen up. First door on the left." In the elegant bathroom, Mia stared at her reflection and wondered why her heart was beating so quickly. It was just Blake Prescott, uptight, demanding, and impossibly wealthy Blake Prescott, who happened to have unexpectedly kind eyes. When she emerged, Blake had made tea and set out 2 cups on the kitchen island. "I thought you might want something warm," he explained, looking almost embarrassed by his hospitality. "The weather report says the rain should stop in about an hour." "That's really thoughtful," Mia said, genuinely surprised. She took a seat on one of the high stools and wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I didn't know billionaires made their own tea." The corner of Blake's mouth quirked up. "This one does. Though I admit it's one of the few things I can prepare without setting off the smoke alarm." Mia laughed, and Blake seemed pleased by her reaction. As they sipped their tea, an awkward silence settled between them, broken only by the patter of rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows. "So," Mia ventured, "how did you end up with Oliver? He doesn't seem like the typical billionaire's accessory." Blake's expression softened as he glanced at Oliver, who had settled at Mia's feet. "He was my father's dog. When Dad passed away last year, I couldn't bear the thought of Oliver going to strangers." "I'm sorry about your father," Mia said gently. Blake nodded, his fingers tightening around his mug. "He built Prescott shipping from nothing. Everyone expected me to follow in his footsteps, but I had different ideas about where the company should go. We argued constantly." He paused, looking surprised at his own candor. "When he got sick, we finally found some common ground. He admitted my innovations had merit, and I acknowledged the value of his traditional approach." "That must have meant a lot to you both," Mia observed. "It did," Blake agreed, "but I still wish we'd had more time." He glanced at Oliver. "Taking care of his dog is the least I can do." Mia nodded, understanding dawning. "That's why you're so particular about Oliver's care." "Is that how I come across, particular?" Blake asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. That's the polite word for it, Mia teased, then immediately worried she'd overstepped. To her relief, Blake chuckled. Fair enough, I've been called worse. The rain eventually stopped, and Mia took Oliver for a shortened walk. When they returned, Blake was on his phone but raised a hand in farewell as she left. Something had shifted between them, though Mia couldn't quite define what. The next morning, Blake was waiting with coffee when she arrived. I thought you might need this, he said, handing her a to-go cup. It's still early. Thanks, Mia replied, surprised and touched by the gesture. How did you know I take it with cream? I pay attention, Blake said simply, then seemed to realize how that sounded. I mean, I noticed the other day when you were here during the rain. Mia hid her smile behind the cup. Well, it's perfect, thank you. As she walked Oliver, Mia found herself thinking about Blake far more than she should. Yes, he was handsome in that classic, chiseled jawline way that graced magazine covers, but there was more to it than that. The glimpse of vulnerability he'd shown yesterday had revealed a depth she hadn't expected. When she returned, Blake was waiting by the door, keys in hand. I'm sorry to rush you, but I have an early meeting. No problem, Mia replied, unhooking Oliver's leash. Is there anything else you need before I go? Blake hesitated. Actually, I was wondering if you might be available this weekend for something extra. I have a company picnic on Saturday, and the invitation explicitly states that Oliver is welcome. I can't handle both networking and dog watching simultaneously. You want me to come to your company picnic? Mia clarified. To watch Oliver, Blake emphasized. I'd pay you double your usual rate, of course, Mia considered briefly. Sure, I can do that. What time? 11 to 4 at Riverside Park. I'll text you the exact location. Blake seemed relieved. Thank you. This helps tremendously. As he rushed out, briefcase in hand, Mia couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment. Of course, he only wanted her there professionally. What had she expected? Saturday arrived with perfect weather, sunny and warm with a gentle breeze. Mia dressed in a casual sundress and sandals, hoping it was appropriate for a corporate event. When she arrived at the designated picnic area, she was immediately struck by the extravagance. What she'd envisioned as a simple gathering was actually a lavish affair with catering staff, string musicians, and even a small carnival area for children. Blake spotted her immediately, excusing himself from a conversation to approach. He looked different in casual attire, dark jeans, and a light blue button-down with rolled sleeves that revealed strong forearms. You made it, he said, sounding genuinely pleased. Oliver, who had been sitting obediently at his side, broke protocol to greet Mia enthusiastically. Wouldn't miss it, she replied, kneeling to pet Oliver. This is quite the picnic. Blake grimaced slightly. It's excessive, I know. Our events coordinator gets carried away, but the employees and their families enjoy it, so I don't interfere. It's nice that you include families, Mia observed, looking around at the children running happily between activities. Many of our employees sacrifice time with their loved ones for the company's benefit. The least we can do is acknowledge that occasionally. Something in his tone suggested this philosophy was personal to him. Was your father big on family events? Mia asked gently. Blake's expression tightened. Not particularly. Work always came first. He shook his head as if dispelling unwanted memories. I should introduce you to some people. You'll be less conspicuous that way. As Blake led her through the crowd, Mia was surprised by how he introduced her simply as Mia with no explanation of her role. People seemed curious but welcoming, and several commented on how well-behaved Oliver was. He's usually not this calm at these events, remarked an older woman who introduced herself as Blake's executive assistant. You must have a magic touch. Before Mia could clarify her role, Blake interjected. Mia has a way with him. She's studying to be a veterinarian. Almost finished, actually, Mia corrected, surprised that Blake remembered this detail from one of their brief conversations. Just my clinical rotations left. How impressive, the assistant said warmly. And how did you two meet? Blake and Mia exchanged glances. Through Oliver, actually, Mia said truthfully. How romantic, the woman sighed, clearly misinterpreting the situation. Before either could correct her, they were interrupted by an announcement that lunch was being served. Blake guided Mia toward a table reserved for executives, his hand lightly touching her lower back. The casual contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. Throughout lunch, Mia observed Blake in his element, confident, respected, occasionally even funny. This was a different man than the rigid, formal person she'd first met. When he laughed at something his financial officer said, the sound was so genuine it made her smile. After the meal, Blake was pulled into conversation with some board members. He glanced at Mia apologetically, but she waved him off, indicating she was fine taking Oliver to explore the grounds. She wandered toward the carnival area, where Oliver proved to be a hit with the children. As she watched him patiently enduring enthusiastic petting, a man approached her. "You must be the famous Mia," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus, VP of Operations. Blake speaks highly of you." "He does?" Mia asked, surprised. Marcus grinned. "Well, in his way. He mentioned you're exceptionally reliable and good with Oliver, which from Blake is practically a sonnet." Mia laughed. "I'll take it as high praise then." "You should," Marcus agreed. "I've known Blake since college. He doesn't trust easily, especially since taking over the company. Too many people trying to get close to him for the wrong reasons." "I can imagine," Mia said, thinking of Blake's isolated lifestyle. "It's good to see him relaxing today," Marcus continued. "Having you here seems to help." Before Mia could process this comment, Blake appeared beside them. "I see you've met Marcus," he said, his tone casual but his eyes watchful. "Just singing your praises, boss," Marcus said with a wink at Mia. "Don't worry, I didn't share any embarrassing college stories." "Thankfully, those are few," Blake replied dryly. Marcus laughed. "Only because you spent most of college in the library." "I'll leave you two alone. Looks like the dessert station is open." As Marcus departed, an awkward silence fell between them. Oliver, sensing the tension, nudged Blake's hand with his nose. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Blake finally asked. "I am," Mia replied honestly. "Your colleagues are very nice. They're curious about you," Blake admitted. "I don't usually bring guests to company events." "I'm just the dog walker," Mia reminded him, feeling a strange pang as she said it. Blake's expression became unreadable. "Is that all you are?" Before Mia could respond, they were interrupted by a group of children asking if they could play with Oliver. The moment passed, but Mia found herself replaying Blake's question for the remainder of the afternoon. As the event wound down, Blake approached her near the dessert table. "Would you like a ride home? My driver is waiting." "Oh, I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition," Blake insisted. "It's the least I can do after you spent your Saturday here." Mia relented and soon found herself in the back of a luxury sedan with Blake and Oliver. The dog promptly fell asleep, exhausted from the day's activities. "He had a wonderful time," Mia said, breaking the silence. "So did I," Blake replied, his gaze direct. "More than I expected to." Mia's heart quickened. "Your company seems to be doing well." "Everyone I spoke with is excited about the new international expansion." "Is that what we're going to talk about? Business?" Blake asked, his voice low. "Not what's been happening between us," Mia swallowed hard. "I wasn't sure there was anything to discuss." "I think there is," Blake said carefully. "I've never met anyone like you, Mia. You're genuine in a way that's rare in my world." "I'm just me," she replied simply. "Nothing special." "That's where you're wrong," Blake countered. "Do you know what Marcus told me today?" "He said I smile more when you're around. He's known me for 15 years and he noticed a difference after just a few hours." Mia didn't know how to respond. The car slowed to a stop and she realized they'd arrived at her apartment building. "Would you like to come up for coffee?" she offered impulsively. "You and Oliver, I mean." Blake's smile was genuine. "I'd like that very much." Mia's apartment was modest compared to Blake's penthouse, but clean and comfortable. Oliver immediately made himself at home on her small couch while she prepared coffee in the kitchen. "Sorry it's not as spacious as you're used to," she called over her shoulder. "It's nice," Blake replied, examining the framed photographs on her wall. It feels like a home. When she returned with 2 mugs, she found him studying a picture of her with an older couple. My parents, she explained, they own a small veterinary practice in Ohio. So that's where you get it from, Blake mused. Your connection with animals, I guess so. I was always bringing home strays as a kid. She handed him the coffee. They'd be shocked to know I'm having coffee with Blake Prescott. Because I'm wealthy, he asked, an edge to his voice. Mia shook her head. Because you're on their fridge. Dad cut out that Forbes article about you revolutionizing shipping logistics. He invested in your company's stock after reading it. Blake relaxed, seeming pleased. Smart man. He is, Mia agreed. He also taught me to judge people by their character, not their bank account. And how am I measuring up? Blake asked, his eyes intent on hers. Better than I initially thought, Mia admitted with a small smile. Though the jury's still out. Blake laughed, a warm sound that filled her small living room. Fair enough, I haven't exactly been the easiest person to get to know. No, you haven't, Mia agreed. But I'm beginning to understand why. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily from Mia's studies to Blake's vision for his company. As evening turned to night, Oliver dozed contentedly between them, occasionally sighing in his sleep. When Blake finally stood to leave, there was reluctance in his movements. Thank you for today, he said, not just for helping with Oliver but for everything else. You're welcome, Mia replied softly. I enjoyed it too. At her door, Blake hesitated. I'd like to see you again. Not as Oliver's walker but as someone I'm interested in getting to know better. Mia's heart raced. I'd like that too. Dinner tomorrow, I'll cook. At Mia's skeptical expression, he amended, or we can order in, but at my place, just us. Just us, she agreed. It's a date. Blake's smile was worth every moment of uncertainty she'd felt. When he leaned down to kiss her cheek, the brief contact left her skin tingling. Good night, Mia, he murmured. Good night, Blake. The next evening, Mia arrived at Blake's penthouse with butterflies in her stomach. When he opened the door, the familiar apartment had been transformed. Soft lighting, music playing quietly, and delicious aromas filling the air. You're cooking, she observed, genuinely impressed. I've been practicing, Blake admitted. Marcus has been giving me lessons. Though I did order backup just in case. Mia laughed. Honest and prepared, good qualities. Dinner was surprisingly edible, a simple pasta dish that Blake had clearly put effort into. They ate at his dining table, which Mia realized she'd never seen used before. Do you ever entertain here? She asked, curious about his life before she entered it. Not often, Blake admitted. The penthouse was my father's choice, not mine. It never felt like home until... Until what? Mia prompted. When he didn't continue, Blake met her gaze. Until you started bringing life into it, you and Oliver. The honesty in his voice touched her deeply. I think Oliver was already doing that, I just helped him along. You did more than that, Blake insisted. You reminded me that there's more to life than work. My father never learned that lesson, and I was following the same path. After dinner, they settled on the couch with Oliver between them. Blake hesitantly reached for Mia's hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. I've never been good at relationships, he confessed. The company always came first. And now, Mia asked softly. Now I'm wondering what I've been missing, Blake replied. When you smile at Oliver or laugh at something I say or challenge me on my ridiculous schedules, I feel more alive than I have in years. Mia squeezed his hand. For what it's worth, you're not what I expected either. Under all that billionaire sternness is someone who cares deeply. Only about things that matter, Blake said, his eyes never leaving hers. And you matter, Mia, more than I thought possible. When he leaned in to kiss her, Oliver chose that moment to wedge himself between them, causing both to laugh. Even your dog has perfect timing, Mia teased. Our dog, Blake corrected, then looked surprised at his own words. I mean, I know what you mean, Mia assured him, reaching over Oliver to touch Blake's face. And I like the sound of it. Their first real kiss was worth waiting for, tender yet passionate, a promise of feelings still developing but already undeniably strong. In the months that followed, Mia continued walking Oliver, but their arrangement evolved. She moved her clinic rotations to mornings and spent evenings with Blake and Oliver. The penthouse gradually became warmer, filled with Mia's books, shared meals, and laughter. When Mia graduated from veterinary school, Blake was in the audience, cheering louder than anyone. He'd arranged for her parents to fly in as a surprise, and the four of them celebrated together at a restaurant Blake had reserved for the occasion. "Your daughter is extraordinary," Blake told Mia's father as they shared a toast. "She's changed my life." "She has that effect on people," her father replied with a knowing smile, "and animals too." Later that night, back at the penthouse, which now felt like their home, Blake led Mia to the terrace overlooking the city. Oliver followed, carrying something attached to his collar. "What's this?" Mia asked, kneeling to investigate. When she saw the small velvet box, her breath caught. Blake took the box from Oliver's collar and dropped to one knee. "Mia Geller, you walked into my life to take care of my dog, but ended up taking care of my heart too. I can't imagine my future without you in it." He opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Mia's eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she managed. "Yes, absolutely yes." As Blake slipped the ring onto her finger, Oliver barked happily as if giving his approval. When Blake stood and pulled Mia into his arms, she knew with absolute certainty that the best decision of her life had been accepting that dog-walking job. 1 year later, they married in a garden ceremony where Oliver served as ring bearer. Blake's employees, who had watched their boss transform from a driven workaholic into a balanced, happier version of himself, filled the guest list alongside Mia's family and friends. "I never expected this," Blake whispered during their first dance. "When I hired you to walk Oliver, I was just trying to take care of my father's dog." "And now," Mia asked, her head resting against his chest, "now I understand what Dad was trying to tell me before he died," Blake replied. "He said success means nothing if you have no one to share it with." He was right. Mia smiled up at him. "So the billionaire shipping magnate was outsmarted by a dog walker, completely," Blake agreed, kissing her tenderly. "And it's the best thing that ever happened to me." As they danced under the stars, Oliver watching contentedly from beside the dance floor, Mia silently thanked the golden retriever who had brought them together. Sometimes, she thought, love arrives in the most unexpected packages or on the end of a leash.